His Imperial Highness Prince Estefanos Matthias of Ethiopia, Her Royal Highness, and I must add my friend, Ndileka Mandela, Her Excellency, Baleka Mbete, as a Speaker, former Deputy President, and one of the architects of the freedom that some of us today enjoys. His Excellency Ambassador Abdu Salih, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Ambassador Zanail Arid Matua, Dr. Jane Mufumari, CEO of Freedom Park, Dr. Liaquat Azam, Dr. Vuyani Boy. Many doctors here, if you get sick, there's no problem. With His Excellency Nelson Mufa, Resident Coordinator, UAE Ambassador Maash Almeli, Turkey Ambassador Asha Gul Kandash, Russian Ambassador Ilya Rogachev, I hope he's named after my favorite Russian poet, Ilya, Indonesian Ambassador Mr. Wahan, Burundi Ambassador Alexis Bukuru, Japanese First Secretary Chubachi, and if I haven't mentioned your name, I'm still standing on that very same protocol that was mentioned. I come here today and I feel at home because I met so many PhDs this morning, people with a PhD. I also have a PhD. I passed high school with difficulty. I would like to tell you the most frequent question I get asked, will the GNU last? That's the most frequent question. And you're going to get an answer today. And a reason for that answer. But I think there's 5 stories I would like to share here today. And you see, I don't have a paper in front of me because I'm speaking about Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. I'm speaking about the most talked about man in the whole world. Many of you sitting here today have listened to many lectures. You've read many books about Mandela. There's really nothing that anybody can tell you. But I want to share a different side to this great man today. I want to tell you 5 stories. For those that don't know, I spent my whole youth in jail. I grew up in prison. And I wasn't a political prisoner. Many people say, you were at Robben Island. I don't say yes or no. If God put in their heart that I come from Robben Island, who am I to argue? But I was a common criminal. I grew up, became a gangster at the age of 12, 13 years old. At the age of 15, I was involved in my first bank robbery. At the age of 18, I was one of the most wanted criminals in this country. At the age of 20, I was sentenced to 17 years in prison. I wasn't sentenced to any prison, I was sentenced to the Grootfontein maximum security prison for hardened criminals. I went to jail. I joined one of the most feared gangs in jail. In 3 years, I led the 26th gang. And just for the ambassadors that's here, in South African prisons you get 5 gangs, everywhere, very organized. Gang number 1 is the 26th gang. They're the capitalists of the system. They're there for money-related issues. Gang number 2, you get the 27 gang. They violent, they stab, kill. Gang number 3 is the 28 gang, got involved in sexual activity in jail and violence. Gang number 4 is the Big Five gang. They're the guys that work with the cops, that inform. Gang number 5 is the Royal Air Force. They're the guys that escape. I don't know much about them because they're never there. But I became a member of the 26 gang. And I went from being an honorary member to leading the 26 gang. And I was extremely racist. I hated white people with a passion. I hated white people extremely. And I was released from jail. But just before I went to jail, Nelson Mandela broke my heart. Nelson Mandela stabbed many of us then in the back. Nelson Mandela betrayed many of us then. When we heard Nelson Mandela was coming out, I remember for the first time I woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning. My mother said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Mom, don't worry where I'm going. I'm coming back with good news." She said, "No, I want you to paint the roof of the house." I said, "Don't worry about painting this nonsensical house. Where I'm going, Mandela's coming out. I'm going to choose the house of a white man in town." And I went to town, went to look at the most nicest house, former President Balekambet. Because I knew Mandela's coming out, we're going to take the white people's houses. Because there's so many black people, I had to choose 2 or 3 houses, just in case somebody had my dream house in mind. And we were ready when Nelson Mandela came in. And Nelson Mandela stepped us in the back and he spoke about reconciliation. Now many of us didn't understand what is reconciliation. And we asked the educated people, is it time for us to go and repossess? And they said no. Mandela said we must work with white people. We were very disappointed. Went to jail. Nelson Mandela was outside and he said in one of his speeches, how a society treats its prisoners is how you should judge that society. 2 days after that speech, we were no longer sleeping on thin mattresses. We got beds, mattresses, extra blankets because of that speech. And I didn't really forgive him totally, but I was on my way to forgiveness. I mean, you can't compare a house to a blanket, but yeah, and a mattress. And I came, when I was in jail, the number 1 rule about jail is that you don't interfere with a gang, with the work of another gang. And if you told me 2 minutes before I decided to change my life that I would change my life, I would have laughed at you. I would have asked you to check your temperature. A young white boy came into prison and he was given a chocolate by one of the gangs. And as a 13-year, 12-year-old boy, he ate the chocolate. And that evening they started to rape him. They raped that child for many hours. He cried, he screamed, he begged. No one helped him. I was there. I didn't help him. The next day he was laying in a corridor naked in his own blood, shivering. And everybody jumped over him because he's a white boy. And just as I was about to jump over him, I looked at him. And something got hold of me. And I said to him, I think you should go to the cops. And he said, I can't go, sir, the criminals killed me. In that moment, at great risk to my own life, I picked him up and I took him to the wardens. And I said, this child has been violated, and they said, there's no proof. I said, look at the blood on my t-shirt. And they said, there's no proof. And I said, I'm going to give you all the proof in the world. And they laughed at me. And I remember when I was sentenced, Judge C.B. Salier said, he asked me, before he sentenced me to 17 years, he asked me, tell me why I should not sentence you to a long prison sentence. Tell me why I should tell me in mitigation of your sentence. I stood up and I said to him, I don't want you to give me a lesser sentence. I said, I'm a colored male. You don't know how we grew up as colored boys. You don't know our story. It's too late for you to want to feel sorry for me. You should have felt sorry for all the other colored boys that died. I don't want your mitigation. Do what you want to do. I need to go. And he said he's never met somebody, he's never sentenced somebody that has a potential to become somebody in life. And Judge C.B. Salyer said, you are one of the most intelligent people I've had in my court. I'm sentencing you because I know you can make a change in your life. Went to jail, and I decided I'm going to help this boy, and he was white. And I called my mother. Now, one thing about women that you get to learn that now, they know when they're being lied to. They just sometimes act like they don't know. So when we men lie, they know you lie, but they act like they don't know. So I called my mother. I said to my mom, I'm changing my life. My mother said, amen, my child. What? I said, Mom, I need you to do something for me. She said, anything you want, my boy. I said, Mom, I need you to buy me a book on how to operate a secret video camera. My mom was so excited for my change. I asked for one book. She sent me 14 books to jail. I had to tear off the cover so people couldn't see what I was reading. Long story short, I read those books. I studied those books for 6 months. I read nothing else. And I took the money I made from drug selling in jail, and I told my sister, and I got another friend of mine to call his brother to bring us cameras. And we had to dismantle those cameras. We smuggled those cameras in bit by bit, screw by screw, part by part, wire by wire. And we made a video in jail of how they sell children in the sex trade in jail. We made a video of all the guns that's being smuggled. We made a video of how prisoners are truly being treated. And President Nelson Mandela President Thabo Mbeki then sent a commission called the Jali Commission of Inquiry. I was already 6 months before my release, but I came out of jail, and the 6 months, I was released early for good behavior. When I came out of jail, it is the norm. When you've been a general in jail, you come out, you must get a push, a start, what you would call seed funding to start your criminal empire. And I refused the seed funding, and I asked my mother. I was living by my parents' house, small house. And every day I would see, I was on parole, I would see these white kids in our neighborhood. And I asked my mother, what are they doing here? And she said, they're coming to buy drugs. And I said, which school are they at? She's like, Grey College, St. Michael's. Next morning I went to the principal of the school and I said, your kids are buying drugs, I would like to tell them about the dangers of jail. And he allowed me to speak at Grey College to his children. After that, I was too embarrassed to ask him for money to go back home. Taxi money. But I can tell you they gave me good food. White schools got good food during break. If you ever want to go and you're hungry, go and give a good talk at a white school, they got even dessert. They don't just say thank you, Ralebua, utle hape. No, they feed you. And I walked home. When I got home, and this is story number 2. I got home, my mom was crying. I said, Mommy, why are you crying? She said, what did you do again? I said, Mom, I did nothing. She said, you lying. I said, Mom, I did nothing. I swear I did nothing. She said, you lying. I said, why are you saying I'm lying? She said, because there's a big white man looking for you. When you come from jail, you want to hear no white people are looking for you. I said, where is he? She said, behind you. I turned around, and this man said, I'm looking for Gayton McKenzie. I said, I'm also looking for that bastard. I said, what did he do to you before I tell you what he did to me? He said, Gayton Mackenzie went to my child's school today. Got 2 boys in that school. And he spoke about the dangers of jail. And my boys came back this afternoon. And the one gave me an unlicensed firearm and the other one gave me mandrakes. And they said they want to change their lives because they're scared of going to jail. And I want today to give Gayton Mackenzie something. And he took out his checkbook. And I took out my ID book. And I gave it to him. And I remember he had the check in his hand and I said, don't give me a check, give me a job. He said, yeah, I think I'll give you a job at my company. So he worked at a company called Chop Security. No, the whole car was branded Chop, 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 Chop. When I jumped in, my neighbor says, did you see? He got arrested again. They took him again. I went. I got a job in 2003. I was paid 1,000 rands a month at Chop Security. I had nothing. And I worked, and after a few months they called me in. And I remember one of the funniest things in my life. In jail, when you say no, this is what you do. When you say yes, because the warders look at you from the top. So when a guy says you have drugs, you go. It means yes to the 2 of you. But to the warden, it means no. So they asked, they said, Mr. Mackenzie, you've been working here for 6 months. We took a bet that you wouldn't last 3 days. We want to give you an increase to 20,000. Do you accept? I said, they said, can you go stand outside quickly? So I went outside like, yes, yes, yes. Then I realized, hey, I just said no. While they deliberating, I wanted to come back. They said, no, wait. I said, no, I just want to say something. No, you're right. You've been doing a great job here. Will you accept 40? I said, yes, I will accept 40. I will accept 40. And they said to me, do you know how to be a motivational speaker? I said, yes. And I didn't really know how to be a motivational speaker. And there's a lady called Ria de Villiers, a white lady. And I went to her school. And I said, can you teach me how to be a motivational speaker? She took me under her wing. She taught me how to speak properly. Because I was from jail, I speak Sabella, prison language, I mix it, and it's a mess. And Ria took me under her wing. She taught me many things, how to eat with a fork and knife. She taught me so many things. And one day I heard a conversation between her and a friend of hers that said, you are taking the biggest risk of your life. Because this man come from jail. You drive with him in your car. You go everywhere. And I heard Ria says, Mandela taught us Ubuntu. And because of Mandela, I'm going to show this prisoner, ex-prisoner, Ubuntu. In that moment, I finally forgave Nelson Mandela for not giving me a house. And I want to say to everybody here today, we must not just say good things. As I'm standing here, I'm embarrassed about my life. I'm embarrassed about my life of crime. I have lived a life that nobody should live. People don't understand why I don't take a salary as a minister. Because I don't take a salary because I owe this country so much that for me, it's an absolute pleasure just to serve this country. And people have forgiven me. People have forgiven me because Nelson Mandela taught us forgiveness. I am the product of the kindness of strangers. I am what I am because there was a man that lived called Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Nelson Mandela is our North Star. Nelson Mandela is the best thing that ever happened to us. And my call today is for each and everybody here to find the Mandela in you. Because so many of us has moved away from the Mandela in us. South Africa has walked away. We have failed Nelson Mandela. Freedom Park has failed Nelson Mandela. My department has failed Nelson Mandela. Government has failed Nelson Mandela. Citizens has failed Nelson Mandela. Business has failed Nelson Mandela. White people has failed Nelson Mandela. Black people has failed Nelson Mandela. And I tell you why I'm saying so. Because there are young people today, and maybe you don't want the visitors to know, but they have to know. There are young people today that call Nelson Mandela a sellout. I know it, and you know it. The reason why they call him a sellout is because when the hunter tells the story of the hunted, he will tell not the story of the hunted, he will tell the story of the hunter. We have not done sufficiently as South Africans to talk about this icon. The word sellout and the word Nelson Mandela does not belong in one sentence. We have failed Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela will be ashamed if he has a view of South Africa today. White people still have everything. White businesses have not shared sufficiently. Black people has adopted the mannerisms of the erstwhile oppressor. Because I come from the colored community, which were there during the times of Krotua. But today, legislatively, there's a difference between colored and black. Colored people today are not seen as Africans. While the first person Nelson Mandela hired was Professor Jakes Gerwel by his side. Then some fools come and they decide colored people cannot be black. While colored people, let me tell you something today. When Solomon Mahlangu was hanged, Frank Rivers was hanged. When Steve Biko was killed by the police, Ashley Creel was killed by the police. When Nelson Mandela was on Robben Island, Harry the Strandloper was the first president on Robben Island. When Walter Sisulu was on Robben Island, South Africa had many other prisoners on Robben Island. I came here today to tell you, we are one people. The way Nelson Mandela never saw Ahmed Kathrada as lesser than him. But legislatively, Indian people are not being treated the same as black people in this country. Colored people are not the same. We need to look in the mirror and fix that. We should not avoid the national question. We are one people. We fought one struggle. We went to one prisoner. We are the children of Mandela. And you cannot bring Mandela's name in disrepute. In my community, you do get racist people. In your community, you do get racist people. We should not be known by the worst of us. We should be known by the best of us. This man, I went to Guernsey, and the gentleman that drove the taxi didn't know where South Africa was. And when I said, Mandela, his face lit up. He said, Mandela country! And he didn't want me to pay. I had to tell him Mandela left me a big inheritance, which was partially true. So, at this august moment, where are we as South Africans? You should never have asked me to come and speak here. If you wanted me to come and give you poetry and nice things about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela made one mistake. He said he was not a saint. I tell you, Nelson Mandela was a saint. Nelson Mandela has given us something that must live in us for the rest of our lives. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela sacrificed everything for us not to be divided, but to be united. I was criticized in my maiden speech. I was asked by the EFF, why can you agree, what is your stance when it comes to the stem in the national anthem as the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture? I stood proudly because I had to dig deep into the Mandela in me before I could answer them. And we each have a Mandela in us. And I said to them, I'm very proud of this stem because it's a testament of where we were and where we are today. I want to say to South Africans here, President Ramaphosa has given, you know how it is, very informally. The leaders in the GNU, we would talk, what do you want? What do you want? Which ministry you want? And I said, I want Home Affairs for particular reasons which I will just elaborate on shortly. And I said, I want police as number 2. And I asked my friends, what can I say as number 3? And I never knew my friends are so selfish and such cheapskates, because they then, Mambaleka, they then said, I must get sport, because they want free tickets. It wasn't for any good reason. It was for very selfish reasons, because I love my selfish friends. I then said, sport, arts and culture. When the president called at 6:30 p.m. and he said, Mr. Gayton McKenzie, it would be my pleasure if you serve in my cabinet, and I want you to serve in the portfolio of sport, arts and culture. I was being polite. I was like, yeah, thank you. I wasn't particularly happy. But I want to make a confession here today. If the president calls me tomorrow and he says to me, you can have police or home affairs, I will refuse, because I'm at the best place in South Africa. I love this portfolio. I'm going to change the way things has happened in the past, because this portfolio is a portfolio called social cohesion. We must come together as white, black in South Africa. We are one nation. We are the children of Nelson Mandela. We should not let people divide us. The first thing I'm going to do, every school in this country, I'm going to meet with the Minister of Education, should teach children about Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Every institution must be taught. I'm going to speak to the Minister of Prisons that there must be lessons in jail about Nelson Mandela. That we will have fewer people coming out of jail with the intention of still continuing with a life of crime. Because here we have a man that has been given to this country to change the unchangeable. And you must never forget that we are the children of Nelson Mandela. And as a Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, I want to say to you, many people see this department as a lesser department. They are about to see. I'm already, truth must be told, I'm already the best minister. I'm not saying that. News 24, my biggest hater, said that this morning. So who am I to argue with my haters if they think I'm great? But I want to end this by telling about the GNU. You know, great men take the road less traveled. It was very easy for Nelson Mandela to be populist, but he didn't. he took a decision. We all look forward to the name of the Springbok. Mandela was a saint. We all look forward to the Springbok name change. Majority of us sport people. Nelson Mandela fought and he said, we shall retain the name of the Springbok. Today, the Springboks are the ones keeping this country together. And that we have to admit. Mandela saw that 30 years ago. What us mere mortals are only seeing now. Somebody says, how dare you have such a xenophobe speak at such a function like today. I was jumping in the plane and a lady was sitting next to me, only the two of us. She's a Zimbabwean and she was shivering. And I asked her, are you cold? And she was scared to speak. And she said, I'm scared of you. I said, why? She said, because you hate foreigners. I engaged her for 2 hours from Cape Town. And I said to her that the great Nelson Mandela, the Ethiopians had to give him a passport because he loves law and order. He didn't go to other countries on the back of a crocodile. He had to get a passport from the Ethiopians because he understands countries have rules. I explained to the lady that I am not xenophobic, but every country has laws that needs to be followed. Because when you kill somebody here, we want to be able to find you. But if you are undocumented, we will not be able to find you. And there are some amongst us that is using foreigners, illegal foreigners, to reverse the gains of the freedom fighters. Because then they don't need to pay them a living wage. Then they don't need to register them for UIH. They still want back the kafir mentality that they can lord over people with a darker color than them. Hence, they act like they care for those foreigners. And they don't. They are using them because they want to lord over them the way they lorded over us before we were released from the bondage of apartheid. You have scientists from Zimbabwe being gardeners in this country. How can that be right? You have teachers being waiters from Zimbabwe. How can that be right? They are being exploited. I will never be a spectator to the exploitation of another black man or white man or colored man for as long as I'm alive. Everybody coming to this country, come through the right channels and you shall be feeling our great hospitality in this country. I want to tell you about the GNU because I think my time is over. It's the most President Ramaphosa has given me. President Ramaphosa, advocate. Can I tell the latest story, advocate? Oh, yes. I'm a man of protocol. I have to listen to the advocate. He's also my senior in age. The President Ramaphosa was invited by President Macron a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And President Ramaphosa said no, he would not be able to make it, but I will represent him. And when I was in Paris, I was invited, I was telling the former deputy president, I was invited to all these big events that the other ministers of other countries were not invited to. The first three I felt very important. I thought it's maybe my intellect, but I soon realized it's nothing to do with my intellect. It is all to do with the GNU. They are curious about the GNU, the presidents of other countries, and that's why they invited me. But I still enjoy the food and the nice seats that the president sat on. And I'm here today to tell you, I heard Mr. Malema said it's not going to last. I hear people say the GNU is not going to last. I came here today to tell you the GNU, and you must take it from the bad boy of the GNU. If there's going to be a problem, I will be in the center of whatever problem might arise there. the GNU is going to last for the next 5 years. And we run the risk of South Africans loving this GNU so much that they give us another 5 years of GNU. Why am I saying the GNU is going to last? Because everybody goes around and say that the ANC needs this. They're not lying. The ANC needs this. But the DA needs it more. And nobody talks about that. Because we're eating them up in the Western Cape. They can't afford to have me in and they're outside. So that is a good mixture of all of us. And I also need this GNU. I mean, look where I'm standing today. And so people should not act like they don't need the GNU. I tell you one inside story of the GNU. On this side of me sat Peter Groenewald in the GNU. Where's the CEO, the member of your party? Freedom Front Plus. He even mentioned it here in front of the former deputy president. On this side of me sits the president of the PAC. One day I think I was put there to make peace by President Ramaphosa between these two. One day we're having a debate on a matter. And I knew that my views aligns with the views of the Pan-Africanist Congress on that particular matter. But the PAC, I put something forward and the PAC and the Freedom Front Plus ganged up against me. And their ideas saw the light of day and mine didn't. During lunch I called the president of the PAC one side. I said, how Kanzan? What's happening? Ari, no, you must understand. He's my partner. I said, how is he your partner? He says, you must understand. They're the PAC of white people. So, I want to say to South Africans, people said I'm excited for my job. That was the most apt description. Because I'm excited to bring white, black, Indian, colored together as one. We are a colorful nation. I'm excited for what we are going to do together as a country. I'm excited for the vibrancy of young children coming to Freedom Park, buses standing here for the children coming here on a daily basis. If the security guard didn't work, he's about to work because there's a new minister. He's going to ride bus, number plates coming next. Wait, there's still 60 buses waiting. Wait, work is going to start. Now to everyone here, I beg you. You know, President Cyril Ramaphosa was in the shadow of Nelson Mandela. He was there when he came out of jail. He was there throughout his career. He had him on speed dial. And I can tell you, he has learned. And today I want you to know that President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa took the road less traveled. The easiest way for the ANC to be in power was only to involve two parties, PA and EFF. But that wasn't the road less traveled. Because you make me angry, I'm out of there, you'll be out of power. But he chose the most difficult path. And people criticized him and said he took a sellout position. I'm here today to tell you, I didn't speak to Cyril Ramaphosa, President Cyril Ramaphosa. I didn't like President Cyril Ramaphosa. I spoke ill about President Cyril Ramaphosa. I've never had a day in my life where I spoke well about President Cyril Ramaphosa. He knew that, I knew that, we were enemies. But he looked deep inside himself for the Mandela in him. And he appointed a man as in his cabinet that never spoke well of him. He put his personal feelings towards me aside. and he put the country first. And for you to come here and say that will not last. And I want to say to those that say President Cyril Ramaphosa sold out, including in the ANC, you don't know how you missed a bullet. If you are leaving the fate of the ANC in the hands of me and Julius Malema, you might have been out of power already. But because he's a visionary, he understood, even if I get angry and I leave, that GNU is still standing. He put the country first. And I want to end by telling everybody here, the lady that taught me how to speak properly, she did it because of Mandela. She found the Mandela in her. The gentleman that gave me my first job found the Mandela in him. Cyril Ramaphosa, by bringing everyone together like Mandela did, found the Mandela in him. When I helped that young boy despite being a racist, I found the Mandela in me. And I'm wishing and praying today and instructing you, it's time for us all to find the Mandela in us. Thank you very much.
Asimbetheleni izandla again.